planes need assembly. Each plane and action figure sold separately. There's Twiki.
Get the robot.
You can pretend he's being chased by Draco, Tigerman, and the Draconian Guard.
Calling Buck Rogers. Help!
Buck Rogers, Twiki, Draco, and Tigerman. Each sold separately by Mego.
All right, welcome back, boys and girls, to a new edition of Top 10 Toys. This week, we are going to be looking at Buck Rogers. Now, this came through as a viewer suggestion from John's Box of Comics, so hopefully he's looking forward to this list, as this was kind of fun to do. I remember this series pretty well from when I was a kid, as I found these little figures always mixed in with my Star Wars guys. They were kind of a cross between a little bit like G.I. Joe's mixed with the Kenner action figures, like a little bit, because you had that extra posability, but they had that sci-fi vibe that I dug. So with the vehicles and some of the figures, especially the size with the 3 3/4, and then you had the larger Megos. This was a fun toy line. But before we get into the toys, let's just take a quick look back and remind you guys who Buck Rogers is. Now, he started all the way back in like the 20s. I think it was like 1928 or 1929 in a book by Philip Francis Nolan, this Armageddon 2419 AD. This was a little novella novel that they did back then that introduced us all to the character. And then soon after, he was hitting it up in little comic strips that ran in some of the papers back in the day. Maybe about a decade later, there was even a little movie serial that had some live action, I guess you would say, back in like 1939 thereabouts. There's like I think 12 episodes that kind of ran through his little movie serial, which was kind of cool. Now, the production value on the older one actually looked better than the one that came a little bit later in 1950 that ran on ABC. But it is what it is. So again, like 10 years later, ABC decided to try a little series doing Buck Rogers as well, but didn't really seem to hit that stride. But I think the thing that I really remember more about Buck Rogers is the parody done by Looney Tunes with Duck Dodgers. Duck Dodgers in the 24th and a half century was something that always rang in my head, and it still sticks there even today. Marvin the Martian was one of my favorites, and still is one of my favorite Looney Tunes characters. And it's partly in relation to those old cartoons with Daffy Duck there, doing a little parody of his own.
Outer space, like Duck Dodgers in the 24th and a half century.
Now, another fun thing from that time, and now we're like in the mid-50s here, 1953 thereabouts. There was also comic books running throughout these this time frame. Buck Rogers, I think he had his own comic. He was also featured in Famous Funnies. And there's this one that I just absolutely love this cover. And this is on 211. This is a Frank Frazetta cover. It's just gorgeous. I mean, I wish I had this book, but I just can't quite afford it. It's a little bit pricey. But again, so Buck Rogers is a character that started off in novels, comic strips. He's done comics. He's been on TV. They had him on television shows, in the movies. So he really ran the gamut way, way, way back in the day. But it wasn't until about 1979 when NBC decided to do a new series based on the character, starring Gil Gerard and Aaron Gray, who we all loved and is probably one of the early crushes of many of us, including John's Box of Comics. And I'm with you, buddy. So let's get into looking at this list, because most of the list is going to be tied into that television show and the toys that kind of spun out of it from Mego. But we got a few others that will be mixed in there as well. And another thing that John had mentioned about this is that this property, Buck Rogers, is coming back. George Clooney is signed on to produce. I don't believe he's going to be starring in this, because I love Clooney, but he's getting a little up there in age to be doing some sort of sci-fi action hero stuff. But producing, I'm sure this is something that we can all get on board with, because again, we're talking about a character that's nearing a century. It's 1928. I think was the time when that novel hit, and we were introduced to the character, and it's 2021, so 100 years later, and this character is still hanging around. That is pretty impressive. So, without further ado, let's just get into this list and see what we got going here. Now, before we hit to the top 10, I think it's also a good idea just to kind of look back on some of the toys that were there, before, and some of these are quite old. Again, this is a character that went back to the 20s, so seeing these little tin toys, this little Buck Rogers rocket ship, I think was from 1934, is it's pretty cool, actually. And this little wind-up, they were like little wind-up toys almost. I mean, these were the toys that like it's not even my dad's, before my dad, I guess grandparents and would play with. And these wind-up toys, they're pretty expensive for me in tin toys. I mean, we're talking like $400 or so if you can find one of these things. So you can see there was a little rocket ship one that they had. There was also this rocket police patrol little toy. I don't want to say figure because it's not really a figure. It's a little metal car rocket wind-up thing. I don't know. Still kind of cool. I never had anything like this, but it would be kind of fun to run across this if I could. Now, we recently spoke with artist J.G. Jones on 3 Comic Money, and just by coincidence, when we were just hanging out and talking about other things that we all enjoyed and liked from Lord of the Rings and whatnot, he went and pulled out this Buck Rogers disintegration pistol. I think it was the disintegration pistol, or was it the rocket pistol? I think it was the rocket pistol that he showed, and his didn't work anymore because he used to do that little spark thing, like it was like a little gear inside the blaster, the gun, and you would pull the trigger and it would spark. But his didn't spark anymore. But still, I would think it was between John's recommendation and JG pulling out this rocket pistol. I felt like I really had to do Buck Rogers next for top 10 toys. So that little blaster, that that rocket pistol is about a $250 piece if you can find one today. It's metal. It's pretty sturdy. Finding one in good shape is probably not, or working, probably isn't going to be easy to find, but it is still really cool. So something to keep an eye out for, I guess. But as you can see, that there was the rocket pistol as well as this disintegrator pistol, which is another model, another version. Again, these are toys from the 30s. So this is old classic stuff. This is well before, again, Mego handled this line, late 70s. I think it was like 1979, into the early 80s. And they had 12-inch figures like this Draconian Guard here as an example. And then you could see they also did the 3 3/4, which, as I mentioned at the start, these were kind of like G.I. Joe, Kenner, Star Wars size figures, and had the posability of like a G.I. Joe, but kind of really fit in more with the Star Wars line. And tons of things like this Star Command base thing that they had, Spaceport playset. Tons and tons of fun stuff. And so this line, it had quite a few figures. Now, not all of the little figures here on the 3 3/4 made it up to the 12 inches, but most of them had a 1-for-1 comparison. And a lot of times the prices are actually the same for the little 3 3/4 up to the 12-inch figures. There isn't a really huge price difference between them that I noticed when I did my research. But a lot of fun stuff in this line. Going back to Twiki here, you can see there's this huge thing from these ads. This, I think, is a JCPenney ad. You can see they had vehicles and figures and all kinds of things that went with this line. So it's a fun one. So let's get right into it, not waste any more time, and see what we've got going here. So for our top 10, we're going to start us off with number 10, and this is one of the villains who didn't really appear too much, really in the show. Many of the villains didn't appear all that often. It was more sporadic than anything, but Tigerman is our top one, and this one is, I saw a high sale of about $120, which is why he's coming in at number 10, and the 3 3/4 figure is, again, about the same price-wise. Pretty close. Still about $100 thereabouts. So Tigerman, pretty cool figure. I mean, he's got the little cheetah print, even though he's Tigerman, but hey, what are you going to do? That's what they decided to go with. But again, the 3 3/4 there has a little bit of a different vibe and a little bit of a different design to his outfit, which is kind of cool to get that little bit of uniqueness there between the two figures. But he was our number 10, which will take us into our number 9 pick, which is this Laserscope fighter. Now, this is like a little simulator thing. I believe there was like a little projector or a little light source thing. It was an odd little toy, but still pretty fun. Simulated lasers and explosion is what the big selling point was on this thing. And as you might have noticed it earlier in that JCPenney catalog, I think this was one they really tried to sell, as it was a high-tech toy, for the time. Pretty cool, a little boxy for what it's worth, but the little figure still, he fit right in there. You can see Buck Rogers just, chilling right there in the cockpit, which is, pretty cool. Now, this Laserscope fighter saw one sell for about $125, so that's why it's coming in at number 9, which will roll us in to number 8. And we're going to go with the main guy here, Buck Rogers. Surprising he comes in this low on the list, but hey, with all this stuff, not everybody's going to make it to the top. So Buck is coming in at about $200, and the 3 3/4, again, sealed in the package, is about the same. This I'm showing you the 12-inch here, which is pretty cool. The boxes are you can find them in decent shape a lot of times, but the 3 3/4 have that kind of familiar carded look to them. So if you can find any, absolutely try to pick them up because it's not an easy find in packages for these things. But like I said, Buck is coming in there at just about $200, which is making him number 8. And I think the one character outside of the Buck Rogers and Wilma that everyone would remember from this series is the little robot, Twiki, because he just kind of stood out. I used to always just use him like he was a droid with my other Star Wars figures because he just fit right in. I mean, he just you play, you pretend, you use your imagination. I mean, that's what we did back then. But Twiki is about $210. And you can see they had a little wind-up walking version that was the 12-inch. Well, maybe not 12, but he fit with the 12-inch line. But it had that little bit of a walking action. And then you had the little guy, the little 3 3/4, but he was probably about half that size, if that. So he's probably less than 2 inches, this little figure. So he fit right in there again with your R2s and other droids from like Star Wars. So again, that's how I used them. But $210 thereabouts for Twiki. So this is going to take us into our number 6 pick, and we finally get to her, and this is Wilma Deering. So another one of the iconic characters from the show, played by Aaron Gray. This figure didn't have a 12-inch version. They only made the 3 3/4, unfortunately for her, and unfortunately, this was not an attractive figure. I mean, if you kind of close in and look up in there, she kind of looks a little bit like Robert Patrick and T2 to me. But yeah, it is what it is. This is the figure we had. Would I have liked one that looked more like the character I saw on television? Absolutely. But yeah, we take what we can get. So Wilma is coming in at our number 6 spot outside of the top 5, as I saw one sell for about $220 carded in that 3 3/4 size. So for those of you looking for Aaron Gray, like John's Box of Comics and myself, she didn't quite make the top 5, but hey, close enough, right? And normally I don't mix in the vehicles with the regular figures, but with a toy line like this, I kind of had to mix in everything. So I have a mix of everything that I could find for Buck Rogers wise, basically, to make this list. Outside some of those 1930s toys, because that went a little too far for me to want to include them. But hitting us at number 5, we're getting our first vehicle, and this is the Draconian Marauder. And this is about $300 in the box. Pretty cool. It kind of looks almost like I want to say you can put it right in there with the X-Wing. It's got a kind of an X-Wing design with how it's shaped. I mean, the wings don't split into the X shape, but when the wings are closed, it kind of gives you that vibe, but a little bit of I don't know. It definitely, you can see why this toy line fit pretty well in with the Star Wars. You can just play and pretend as you wanted to without much need for the imagination to bridge that gap. But this Draconian Marauder, again, $300 is why it's at number 5, which will take us to number 4, which is another one of the ships that you get with this line, and this is the Starfighter, which again is a very cool design. You can see it fits right in there. Your figures, whether they be G.I. Joes, Buck Rogers, or even the Star Wars guys, could just pretty much fit in that cockpit if you wanted them to, because they're all similarly sized. So this Starfighter is coming in at about $400 if you can find one in the box. Again, really cool design. I mean, with this, as age goes on, this white plastic is gonna show its age. It's gonna look a little bit like coffee stained teeth after decades of sitting around in boxes somewhere. But hey, it is what it is, right? So we're gonna roll on our list to number 3, which is the Land Rover. Now, this is an expensive piece in the box. This is $650 if you can find a nice boxed one for this Land Rover. It's not the most exciting design for a toy, but it is still pretty cool. I mean, it is a vehicle. You can pop your characters in, they can drive around one of these little tank treads, and it is definitely still cool. $650 though is a pretty tall order on price. But if you can luck into one, or if you can rebuild one with parts and pieces you can find out there, you might do pretty well for yourself, which is why it is number 3. So we're going to get to our top 2, which we're going to move off our 1979 Mego line with these last 2 and just price-wise, I just couldn't deny them, and it didn't want to just put them as honorable mentions or anything. So I really did want to include them on the list. And the first one we're going to hit up here is the Captain Action. Like, this is the Captain Action suit that you could put on your Captain Action figure. And this is, if you can find one in the box, and the one that I did find that was in the box wasn't even like nicely displayed in the box. It just happened to have a box with all the pieces basically thrown in it. But $875 for this Buck Rogers Captain Action set. And you can see it comes with a suit, boots, and gloves, and little accessories and blasters, and all kinds of fun little knickknacks. And if you can find all of these little pieces, you could see $875 is a pretty high selling price. But it is still pretty cool. I mean, Captain Action was an interesting idea for back then, a way to really reuse a toy for kids, that you can just sell, outfits and uniforms that you could swap him out, and you could make him whoever, they were selling next, from superheroes to sci-fi characters to whatever they might wanted to, sell different kind of different outfits. Definitely a cool idea, and definitely probably something that should be looked at on its own. But for our purposes here, this Captain Action set is coming in at number 2. Which was just edged out for our number 1 spot. Again, this one doesn't go back to those really, really older, guns and pistols from the 30s, but even in the 1940s, I am stretching how far back I'm going with our number 1 pick. But this atomic pistol, which is really, really cool, comes with holsters that you can see. This one came out after World War II. I think it was like 1946, so it's a little bit later, but this one was $900. With this box and all the little extra sets with the holster and whatnot. Really awesome. Like, this would be something really cool to have in a collection. And that's why it's coming in number 1. $900. I know it's a high price. And there were 3 different versions of this. You had the gold looking one, and then you have like just a kind of a plain pewter metal, kind of less fancy one. And then there's also like a silver kind of version of this atomic pistol. So there were 3 different options for you. And all of them were pretty cool. So if you can find anything like that, obviously, pick it up, and especially if you can find it for cheap. But it is definitely a cool little toy, a little figure, cool toy thing to have. So that's why it came in as our number 1. So that's our Buck Rogers list. But I just still have a couple of more extra little things that I just want to bring up about the property and toy line. So I will give you just a couple of honorable mentions. All right, so just a couple more things if you just want to hang in there for the honorable mentions. Our first one is this Star Searcher, which I thought was interesting because this is actually a repurposed Micronauts toy. I forget what the Micronauts toy was called. It was another Star something or other, but it's basically a Micronauts toy that they repackaged for Buck Rogers and sold it like that. I couldn't find any recent sales or anything to get any actual sales data on it, but I got to imagine something like this is probably pretty expensive, especially if you can find it in the box. Because from the research that I found, even the instructions that came with this still said Micronauts on the instructions. They didn't even bother to redo the instruction manual for Buck Rogers. So I think of it as kind of a cool little tidbit. So that's why I wanted to throw it in here at the end for honorable mention. That Star Searcher thing, that bright pink box. It also doesn't really align with the other packaging from the rest of the line, but hey, they try to do something different, which is definitely interesting. Oh, there it is. Star Defender. That's what it was called. This was the Micronauts version. It was the Star Defender. I knew it was Star something. So the Star Defender, it was the Micronauts toy, which is basically what they repurposed for Buck Rogers. So up next, just a couple of the little figures I wanted to throw out there. Another one of the female figures, Ardella. And this is only like a $40 thing if you can find it. So these aren't really expensive, these extra little ones I threw out there. But she doesn't, it's definitely an interesting look. Show her with the weird little horns and this almost I Dream a Genie outfit. But hey, it is what it is. It was a interesting toy for the line. So not everything science fiction has to be high-techy. So here we go. Here's one of our examples of one that's not. Another one we have here is a Killer Kane. I think it was one of the villains. There is the 12-inch as well as the 3 3/4 version of them, and this is like $85 that you can find. I think the smaller one might be the 3 3/4 might only be another $40 figure, but definitely something interesting to look for if you're looking out there. And then I think the main villain Draco is another one that we can just show as a figure, as a another thing that's out there that you might want to find. And that's, again, like a $50 figure if you can find one packaged. I think loose, these guys are mostly in that $10 to $15 range across the board for the 3 3/4. I don't think you're going to pay too much extra for a loose 12-inch one, but hey, you never know. It really all depends on condition and if you have all of the little accessories and whatnot. But one figure that I did find, did not find outside of some really, really later issues, but from the show, was Hawk. Now, it wasn't until really, really recently that I could connect this character of Hawk to Bird Person from Rick and Morty. I am a Rick and Morty fan. As you can see here, I got my little shuttle that's sitting here when I do my little podcasting here. But Bird Person, I didn't know that he was basically based off of Hawk. I mean, I just didn't really get it, and now I can it's kind of obvious. But it's to be fair, it's been forever since I've seen Buck Rogers, so I'm not going to hold myself too accountable for that. But hey, there is a Bird Person figure out there in that Rick and Morty toy line if you want to find one. So that one is out there for you to find if you are interested in such things. But that's my list. Thanks for checking it out. Thanks for stopping by. Hopefully you like these videos. Tell me what you want to see, what you don't want to see. As you can see, I take suggestions. This entire list was based off of a suggestion. So definitely throw it out there in the comments and like and subscribe to my channel. I'm happy to have moved this show now to Tuesdays to kind of space my my productions out, so I got a little more time to do things. And hopefully you are liking the new top 10 toys on Tuesdays, because I like the alliteration, and I like the couple extra days that it affords me to get this stuff done right and done for you guys. So hopefully you're enjoying it, and let me know what you think in the comments, and I will see you all next time.